February 2nd and 3rd is NHL All-Star Weekend in Toronto. Join us for the SDPN All-Star Takeover. 2 days of live shows, special guests, parties, and more, all taking place at the Rec Room in downtown Toronto. Attending the NHL All-Star festivities, we are literally down the street from Scotiabank Arena, so come hang out. On Friday, February 2nd at 2 p.m., join us for live shows from Agent Provocateur, The Chris Johnston Show, and the Steve Dangle podcast before the NHL All-Star Skills Competition. Then on Saturday, February 3rd at 12 noon, we're back with the SDPN All-Star panel with Steve, Adam, Jesse, and an incredible lineup of special guests. And we're not done there. On that Saturday at 7:30 p.m., the SDP All-Star Party. After the final whistle, join us at Isabel's on King Street West. Hang out, have a couple drinks, and close out the NHL All-Star Weekend in style. If you're a hockey fan, this is where you need to be on NHL All-Star Weekend. Tickets for all events available now. Links below, and make sure you're following SDPN Sports on all of your social channels for info, updates, and more.
I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
It's one thing to do one in-person show every now and again, but two in the same week. We get the Monday show, and on Friday, we get to do a live show in front of people at the Rec Room. Hopefully you have bought your tickets by now. The link should be in the description of this episode as part of the SDPN All-Star Takeover. That's Friday, and we can hype that up as much as we want. We should also appreciate the fact that we are in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, bud.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Hard to get my mind around this week just yet.
Why?
Because it's busy. There's a lot of people coming into town like yourself. Obviously, the events of this year's All-Star Game, there's one extra event. And, in addition, you got the PWHL 3-on-3. There's some social events. It just feels like it's Monday right now, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna navigate these days and keep all my bosses happy and also have a good time and all those things?
Can you tell the listeners and the viewers what your week will be like?
Well, I don't know that it's any crazier than yours. It's just, a week like this, we have there's a big media day where all the All-Stars are available to the reporters. So obviously that's on the agenda, and writing stories out of that. Gary Bettman will do an availability on Friday around noontime with reporters. Then you have the Thursday night draft and the PWHL showcase. You have the Friday skills competition, the Saturday All-Star game itself. And as I said, a few people invites for coffees and dinners and a beer and all that stuff. And you mix it all in. I'm just like, oh my goodness. I'm not good at multitasking, Julian.
How do you organize stuff then? Do you not have like a planner? Do you not put your stuff in your phone in terms of, hangouts with people? You not have people like texting you, be like, oh, you're in this. I had someone who I'm not going to name literally text me today, be like, oh, you didn't tell me you were coming into town. He used an expletive that I won't use, but like, you don't have stuff like that. Like people be like, where are you at? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm putting you in the schedule.
It's hard. That's what I'm saying. It's hard to manage all that. It's hard to just imagine how it's all going to fit in. I'm worried I'm going to forget something.
CJ, you won't forget, okay? You have a planner,
Imagine
sure.
Friday, you just are there for the live show and I just forgot somehow.
No.
Would you go on stage alone? Like, how would you manage that?
I would just do
stand-up routine?
Yeah, I think I just have to do stand-up for 45 minutes. Or just come up with terrible jokes. Producer Drew would have to come on with me and like, you know what? If we brought on producer Drew, maybe people would boo him the entire time. We just get him to say really ridiculous takes, and maybe that would carry us through.
It depends. I mean, he'd probably be his anti-Leaf stance might shine through, and I'm guessing, given that we are going to be half a kilometer from Scotiabank Arena, even closer, it's probably going to be a Leafs heavy audience.
Yeah, that's true. We're gonna have to come up with some really fun stuff. One thing that CJ told me that he does not want done for that live show, we will not play the movie game.
I mean, we can.
I mean, you made it.
I would prefer not to.
That's it. Like you made it seem as if you didn't want to play the movie game.
Because I'm so bad, and I realize.
But that's the point.
I know, but it's a lot of pressure to be on stage and coming up with a fake outline for a movie.
I see the anxiousness in your face, just like, oh God.
But I mean, if
it's okay,
if the people want it the people can get it.
CJ, we can find other fun stuff to do, like take-in questions. It'll be the second show of the week, so maybe you have another fun what if. We saw a couple people react to the what if we brought up last week about whether or not, not whether or not, but imagine Patrik Laine in a Detroit Red Wings uniform.
Right. I was thinking one of the limitations of the what if is, I don't know where our audience lands on the age scale, but we're more likely to get access to what ifs for players that are retired or gone on from their careers. And so that they are going to be a little bit old school generally.
That's fair. But at the same time, like
people don't want to talk about a trade that nearly happened last year because, there's still ramifications. The people involved still be in the league, all that stuff.
Yeah, but you're not bringing up like a random trade involving, I don't know, Bill Lindsay.
Maybe.
I mean, if they were part of like something, I'm sure like there's like a massive like the whole idea is to have massive players that people know, regardless of whatever age.
Anyway.
Nah.
I mean, we're still workshopping that one a little bit.
I think once we get that off and running, I mean, we already had the one. We're going to do more of these. It's going to be fun. Like the Friday show, it's going to be really fun too. Again, get your tickets in for the SDPN All-Star Takeover. Link will be in the description.
Do you know what I'm most excited for this week actually is a skills competition?
Me too.
I like of all the All-Star events, I feel like that one carries the most promise to be memorable, which is not something you can always say from All-Star, right? I mean, we could go back over the years. There's not a lot of things in the last couple All-Star games that people are probably going to remember 10 years from now. You know what I mean? But I think there's a possibility. I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, McDavid versus Draisaitl right down to the end for the win, or like it could be anything like that. I think, or McDavid versus Matthews, or, I think something like that could be cool. And, I really get the feeling, we're recording this on Monday, all the players, the 12 players that are participating in the skills competition this year have had to, as of today, put in which events they're going to do.
Okay.
Because they get, there's a certain amount of choice, right?
Yeah.
And then they do get till tomorrow to maybe move depending on, because the way it works is, we won't get too lost in this, but the top 5 in each event get descending point totals, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then anyone below the 5 gets 0 points.
Yes.
And so if 12 players enter the hardest shot, that means 7 are going to end up with a 0. But it might mean only 4 players entered the one-timer thing they're doing. And so maybe some guys are going to want to migrate over, you know what I mean? So there'll be some moving around. But the players are really into it. Like that's at least heading in. And I hope I'm not selling anyone a bill of goods because I've been to so many of these All-Star games and we all know kind of what it's about. But I actually think the guys are into this one.
That makes me happy.
Connor McDavid is getting credit for really pushing, he didn't just like rubber stamp it. My understanding is he had 3 or 4 different meetings with the league and gave a lot of feedback as the process was ongoing, as they kind of honed in on exactly what this would be. And, the idea being, if you don't have, what they're trying to do is identify the most skilled player in the skills competition, right? So if you don't have the most skilled player in the league on board that wants to do this, that's into it, I mean, it's not a credible competition, right?
Right.
But the fact that he's into it and, you got a few Leafs in it on home ice. I mean, look at that 12-player lineup. It's stacked. If anything, I've heard more players are hoping to get in or like get considered an alternate in case someone drops out. Like it's not, they didn't have to coerce the group of 12 you see there in that Friday night skills competition. So
let's not forget about the fact they're competing for $1 million.
Yeah. Did you see Bo Byram was trying to get Kel McCarr one? He was like, he's giving everyone on the decor $100,000.
I saw Kel McCarr was like, I'm not sure Bo knows how money works. Yeah. I hope it really works out. I've seen people talk about how the All-Star game is a joke and no one's into it and no one should be even caring about it. This is just my view, but if you're a hockey fan, if you're an NHL fan, and we're NHL fans, and I get it, we report on the league, but we're fans at the end of the day in terms of the league, in terms of the quality of the game. Don't you not want the game, the All-Star game, to succeed in some way? An opportunity for to see some of the best players, to see them show off personality, for it to mean something. Like watching the NBA skills competition and the slam dunk contest and the All-Star game. I know every year they got it kind of varies from whether it's interesting or not, but that's stuff that like people talk about
for years and years on end. Like people will go back to, I think it was the 2016 slam dunk competition where it was Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine going head to head. And that's like probably the greatest slam dunk contest we've ever seen. You'll go back to when Vince Carter had that single slam dunk performance or Steph Curry hitting threes. Like the other day I think it was there might be some kind of event involving like Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry. Like people get into skills competitions, and it would be really fun if the NHL had something similar of the sort that, it's one thing to get the rest of the sporting world to get into, but at least if their own fans are into it and are excited about it, and we can go back to it in years' time and be like, hey, remember when this happened? Like stuff like that's great for the game.
Well, and there's only 12 players. I think that's key. And that's no disrespect to the second tier of all-stars, if you want to call it that. But I mean,
right.
You're not requiring that everyone be involved. And so you really are limiting it to the field. And from what I understand too, is they recognize that some of the skills events they've had in recent years were like a little too like there's little nets and you got to shoot it. Like it wasn't intuitive. If you just turn on your TV, you're like, what am I watching? I think they've really tried to simplify it. So it's like literally the hardest shot, the fastest skater. There's a one-time event where you're shooting at targets. And I think will be pretty straightforward what you're trying to do and what, means success. And so I think they've really tried to pare it down and make it be truly just measuring skills that are important, obviously, to be an elite level hockey player, pitting everyone head to head. Anyway, I don't need to hype up it more.
No, this is great.
I'm telling you though,
this is great.
I'm legit excited about it.
Me too.
I can't say I don't have no reason to believe the game itself will be worth too much watching. I mean, I just don't think it's going to be that compelling. The last compelling one, frankly, for me was when John Scott was in the game in Nashville.
Yeah.
And just that whole thing was wild, right? And I know the league didn't like it, but I thought it anyway. I would just remember when I was saying that there isn't much memorable. That's memorable to me, for example.
But there's a good reason for that, right? Like this player who no one would ever peg as an all-star makes it, and he steals the show. Like
right.
it was great.
I mean, Kendall Coyne Schofield in San Jose, participating in the fastest skater and like legit beating some of her male counterparts. I mean, like, all that stuff. I think we had a chance for a moment like that out of this skills competition. And I do know this too, that the NHL believes this could be something that has some staying power, that, that maybe the defending champion, like whoever wins this week, gets to come back and defend, his title. And I guess it'd be 2 years time, because I think next year there's no All-Star game.
Right.
Because they're planning to do that in season 14 tournament.
Yes, that's true.
Assuming that all happens, because that,
yeah,
as far as I know, is not all cemented at this point. But
I know it's really easy for us to dump on the league, for us to dump on hockey, and there's a bunch of reasons why. But it's cool when we can look at something that can be fun and say, hey, this should be fun. We should get into it. We should be excited about it. We can't just dump on the National Hockey League every single chance we get.
Well, they're trying.
Yeah, I'll give them points for trying.
Look, there's limitations by this format in general. I think all All-Star games suck. I should be clear.
I get that too.
Seriously, like I have watched MLB All-Star games. I can't say I've ever watched an NFL Pro Bowl. But I'm just going to assume it sucks because I've never heard anyone say I should be.
I mean, the Pro Bowl isn't even really a Pro Bowl as it was before.
Right.
Like,
and the
it's
NBA
different.
All-Star game, like whatever. It's like 180 to 174 and like.
But there are like flashes in those games where the people care.
Okay.
And there are elements about it that are, but I get it too.
I guess my point is.
But the NBA varies, where you're right.
But like no All-Star game is amazing.
No.
So I think you're trying to make chicken salad, you know what I'm saying? Like you're trying to make your best.
Try and make chicken.
It's not going to be perfect.
I don't know if I want you making chicken, knowing how you season your food, but you know what?
Come on now.
It's all right. It was very easy.
But yeah, I think that's going to be cool. It's great that we have a live show.
Yeah.
We're going to get some time together this week, and it's a fun week. Like it's nice to have everybody in Toronto. It's been 24 years since the All-Star game was here, which is just crazy given that, like the league has a head office attached to Scotiabank Arena. Obviously it's a big corporate base for the NHL. It's been a long time.
I'm looking forward to whatever company parties go down this week.
All right. See, this is
because like now
we don't have a morning taping again. Like
because now you're with us. Like you're not rolling around solo dolo. I mean, you do have the TSN boys, but like you get to roll with the Athletic now.
I suspect you won't be seeing the TSN boys at the All-Star weekend.
Oh, really?
I don't know. It's not really their scene.
Really?
Like last year,
Darren Dreger has something else to do?
Last year, I was the only one there for the TSN.
Oh, really?
Crowd, yeah. You're going to see Mark Masters. Sorry, to be
Yeah,
clear, but
like,
I don't
come
think
on.
you're going to see Darren Dreger, and you'll probably see limited Pierre LeBrun. Would be my prediction.
How many? Before I get to some of the other topics we're going to bring up today, how many All-Star games have you covered?
A lot.
How much is a lot?
I mean, they haven't had them every year,
Right.
So I'm going to say at least 10 and probably more.
What was the first year you covered an NHL All-Star game?
Do you have the list of them there?
I could bring it up if you want.
I covered one in Ottawa. I think that was around. Oh, that was later. Actually, Drake was at that one, like a young Drake.
Is that the year where he took a photo with Carey Price?
Probably.
That's probably that year.
I was in Montreal. I think that it was colder than it was like the coldest ever. Was that like 2009 Montreal?
Yes, I want to say that was. I mean, yeah.
I was in one.
I definitely was in high school then.
I was in one in Atlanta. I think that was around 2007. See, this isn't that interesting, but it's.
No, I was just curious. I just want to know like what the number.
I was in Vegas. I was in Tampa for an All-Star. I was in St. Louis for an All-Star. Last year's Fort Lauderdale. So it's up over 10.
Okay.
Probably. Or like roughly 10.
This will be my first.
There you go.
Yeah.
I haven't missed one. It's just they haven't had them every year, right? Because we've had Olympic breaks, we've had lockouts, we've had this and that. So it's not a clean. It's a hard number to get to.
Maybe. I mean, having one is nice. Maybe I get to your number one day. Maybe this is just
It's
the
not
one.
a competition.
It's not a competition at all. But I'm excited about this being my first one.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. The upside here is that it doesn't really matter too. What is bad is also good because all the players generally are relaxed, and it's the top players or a lot of the top players in the league. Access usually is pretty good. Like if depends what kind of stories you might be working on, but like it's a light weekend.
Yeah.
And of course you bump into media friends and people that work for the league or the players. So like, just like people, it's and the stakes aren't that high. That's the upside. I actually remember Vegas 2 years ago. That was the first time I was in a room with NHL hockey players since before the pandemic.
Right.
Because everything had been Zoom access and podiums and whatever. But then when we were in Vegas, they had that media day with the All-Stars and we were all in the same room again. And it was a really small media gathering because at that point, I don't think all the Canadians wanted, I can't remember what the rules were, but maybe I had to test to come home. Or I think I did actually. I think you had to pass the COVID test to fly back. And I think companies were just nervous that you might have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Anyway, that was only 2 years ago, but that was cool. I remember how much fun that was. I was like, wow, we can actually do our job again. We can chat and learn things about each other and get information and all that stuff.
It was a world away, but no such worries about such restrictions for this weekend, thankfully. Let's get to just some news and notes around the league, but also some pulse checks and checking in on. I wanted to check in on two teams in the same division, the Pacific Division, and they are seemingly going on opposite ends. You have the Edmonton Oilers, who are on a 16-game winning streak. Once they get back from their All-Star break, they have a chance to equal the Pittsburgh Penguins record of 17 consecutive wins. And then you have the LA Kings, who are also in that division, and they looked really strong to start off the year. We were looking at them as road warriors, and I believe they've only had 2 wins in their last 16 games.
In a month. Like in an actual calendar month.
And these two teams were in opposite directions to start off the year, and now it has been a complete 180 for both of those teams. Which of these two teams seems more interesting to you right now? We'll get to both of them, but in terms of the Oilers and the Kings situations, which one are you more into?
Well, the level of dominance at Edmonton is unique because, yes, they have the 16-game win streak. They have a separate 8-game win streak, which essentially got them out of the hole they had dug. So when you add all that up, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me, these guys have barely lost in months. Stuart Skinner's numbers naturally are ridiculous during this stretch because he's been playing most of the games in goal. I think you're seeing a different level of defensive commitment from the Oilers' top players, and the stakes could not be higher in Edmonton. They don't have McDavid and Draisaitl signed forever, which is I think a little discomforting. If it's your job to worry about the long-term future of the team. Like Chris Knobloch's coaching every day. This isn't his concern. But if you're looking out big picture and you're wondering where things are going to go, I mean, there's some uncertainty there. which is not a prediction of what's going to happen. We don't know. Leon Draisaitl can't sign an extension legally till July 1st. So it's not really a conversation in terms of what's happening now, but it's just lingering in the background. And the stakes are so high for the Oilers. And so, I mean, just as we said in our preview show, this is the Stanley Cup favorites.
Yeah.
But they got here in the weirdest way possible by winning 2 of their first 12 games, now an 8-game win streak and a 16-game win streak. To me, they're the most interesting team. I think they'll be reasonably active by the trade deadline. You know, we've already seen them sign Corey Perry. He made his debut for Edmonton on the weekend in the game against Nashville. You know, I guess it's kind of boring to talk about a team that's winning a lot because there's not a lot of tension there, right? We can't drum up any drama around them. But
we have talked about in the past about how even with the Corey Perry signing, they could still add.
Yeah.
Or still be at least linked to guys who are available.
I think they're going to get another impact forward.
Absolutely.
And who knows? They might get, depth defensemen. Like, teams like this tend to, I think in addition to the fact that, they don't have forever necessarily with their core driving players, it's pretty clear what the stakes are. Some of the other Western Conference teams, like it's a little early to get too wound up about anything just yet.
Yeah.
Because usually the teams that end up winning a Stanley Cup, they kind of dominate like February, March, April into the playoffs. And so I'm not predicting a major fall off for Edmonton, but it's almost, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But it just seems like some of the other top teams in the Western Conference have some issues, right? Like injury troubles or, just some feelings that it might not be quite their year to the same degree or, Colorado, Vegas. I mean, these teams are going to be heard from before the cup's handed out. Like they're not going away. But if you're Edmonton, maybe you're looking at those teams not with quite the same amount of fear. And obviously those are the last two teams that beat the Oilers out of the playoffs, with Vegas beating them last year on the way to the cup and Colorado dusting them on the way to their championship 2 years ago. So, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there for Edmonton. And I mean, you can't forecast this level of greatness. So who knows if they can beat or match that streak. Have you looked? Like, is it a lot of overtime wins?
I haven't looked specifically for each of them, but I know there are different era, right?
It's a different NHL. Like it was 92, 93.
Correct.
Penguins.
That's when the Penguins did it. And I've seen people complain that like you have to put an asterisk on this winning streak for the Oilers because we live in an era where overtime and shootout wins exist.
Yeah.
OT's one thing. Well, I know back in the day you could tie, but like
I mean,
they won those games.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an asterisk, but it is. It's not quite apples to apples. It's a different league. But my recollection though is they've won a lot of those games in regulation. Like it feels like they're winning a lot of 4-1 kind of games. The Oilers, they're not giving up many goals against, which really stands out. So yeah, I am fascinated by if Edmonton can get it done. It's just so interesting. It comes in this year where you got Vancouver, going well, and obviously Winnipeg. I know they lost a couple games in a row before the break here, but 3 games with overtime or shootout.
Producer Drew is saying
3.
3?
Yep.
Yeah.
So 3 out of 16. That's pretty good. Like they're not getting by on eking out shootout wins.
No. Well, that's actually funny that Drew chimed in here because I wanted to pull up a tweet that he brought up during the win streak when it was at 14 games. This was when it was at 14 games, so 2 wins ago. Teams the Oilers have beaten during their current win streak. He brings up the Rangers when they had Jonathan Quick in net, the Flyers, the Leafs when they were reeling, the Kings. I mentioned how they weren't playing well. Detroit, New Jersey, Seattle, Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose. And I'll add this because he wrote this at the end. It's impressive, but not exactly a murderer's row. Like, what do you make of the fact that, yes, they won all those games, but to Drew's point, there were a lot of, minnows in that schedule of games.
Drew is the master of tweets like that probably just send people into a tizzy.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Just a master. He knows how to troll.
Like, there are a lot of Oilers. Even I wrote to him being like, you have to beat the teams in front of you. What do we say if the Oilers lose that stretch of Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago, wherever that was in the schedule? What do we say about the Oilers?
Well, how many teams have had easy stretches of schedule over 100 plus years of the NHL, and not many others have got to this level? So that's one still comeback. I mean, you can't deny it though. I mean, if it's not, they aren't beating Colorado 3 times in there in Vegas and Boston,
Dallas,
whoever you view the very top teams in the league. But come on, 16 games in a row is nuts. Like they are feeling themselves.
That's an incredible streak.
I almost feel like the All-Star break comes at the worst time.
Yeah, you're on that momentum, and all of a sudden you have to come to a stop.
Yeah,
I forget who they play after the break is over for them, but it is Vegas. So yeah, like geez, your first game back after an All-Star break is Vegas. And I think even Connor McDavid after his last game was saying, yeah, we owe them a good game, just referencing the playoff series between those two.
Sure, it's just like you've spent 4 days on a beach and another 3 days hanging out with Justin Bieber at All-Star.
No big deal.
I'm just saying, like, who knows? Like, I don't know what to expect. When you're winning this much, though, you want to keep playing every other day. Basically. Yeah. But yeah, so the Oilers, they fascinate me. The Kings, I don't have as many answers for. You know, to see them go on this big of a tailspin, kind of a little out of nowhere. Like, they haven't shown hints of this. Like, this is like the bottom has fallen out. And, you know, obviously Rob Blake has been pretty clear. Like, he's not looking to make some big trade. He certainly is not inclined to fire his head coach, Todd McClellan, although whenever you have to answer that question publicly, it's not a good sign, right? It's like...
Yeah. And we've seen already earlier this year, the one team that comes to mind, the Ottawa Senators, at least try to throw some support behind their head coach, but it gets to a point where...
Well, it was like 3 games later and he was fired.
Yeah, like you have to do something. You have the public vote of confidence, and then eventually, if nothing changes, you have to do something.
Right. A team like that, probably this is a good time for an All-Star break because it's like a total reset, fresh look at things, maybe give the coaching staff time over the break to like reassess things they're doing within their structure or how the lines are working, things like that. I mean, the season does come at you fast when you're playing 3 to 4 games a week. I don't know what to say about LA. I mean, like they're now in danger of missing the playoffs.
They're in that wild card fight with teams like with Nashville. St. Louis is picking up its game. Seattle's in the thick of things. Calgary's kind of falling out, but yeah, like they found themselves in that cluster now.
Do you know what we haven't talked about is Joey Decord?
No, we haven't.
He's having like a sneaky awesome year. I don't know if anyone, like he got love at the Winter Classic. Obviously he pitched a shutout that game and that got some attention for a day, but I was looking it up. He's like 4th in save percentage in the league, 2nd in goals against. He doesn't have as many wins as a lot of goalies, but if you look at Seattle, like they're right at the bottom of the league in terms of goal scoring. Like the only reason they're within a whisper of the playoffs, or not the only, but like the main reason is Joey Decord, who kind of, you know, he's been around the league. He played games in Ottawa. He's played a bit in Seattle before, but like he came in to play behind Philip Grubauer. And when Grubauer got injured earlier in the year, he's just taken the job and run with it. Anyway, shout out Joey Decord.
15, 8, and 9, 920 save percentage, 236. Yeah, those are underrated stats for him.
Well, and if he played on a team that scored more goals,
it'd be way better stats.
I think if you have a 920 on most teams, you're going to have more than 15 wins out of 32 starts or whatever he's got.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that just crossed my mind.
But I'm glad we mentioned that. But like, yeah, Seattle is part of that. I still think it's going to get to a point where that Western Conference chase, I admittedly have not been following the Eastern Conference wildcard chase as closely, but I think more and more people are going to eventually catch on and see how tough it is with all those teams trying to get those 2 spots and seeing who's in there. I didn't even mention Arizona that's in the middle of that as well. Like, I think it's going to get fun over the next few weeks.
Well, LA doing this has brought other teams
forward. Yeah.
In a way, like it like makes you start to believe, because like maybe LA, you know, which has been a perennial playoff team the last few years, started off the year again. There was no hint of this coming from anywhere. I don't have a lot of answers for them. I mean, I do know that they are resolute. They are trying really hard not to trade anyone. They're trying, like, they just want to push through this. But, you know, as you referenced with Ottawa and other teams, sometimes it just hits a breaking point.
What about with one big play that I noticed over the weekend, or actually from a couple of days ago, not from the weekend, but it did bring up a lot of discussion, and we saw a suspension doled out for Brendan Gallagher, the Montreal Canadiens forward who elbowed Adam Pelech of the New York Islanders in the head. And once it was announced that he wasn't going to get an in-person hearing, which would have probably gotten him 5 games or more as a suspension, so many people were up in arms about that. He did get 5, but some people kind of thought that the book should have been thrown at Brendan Gallagher.
Well, 5 is a lot.
It is a lot, but it was
it's $170,000.
Yeah, but that was a really dirty hit.
It was. I think this was the rare suspension where there almost is no gray. I mean, in most big hits or plays, like I think there's always a but, or but this happened over here. It's like, no, he just like, he lines him up. He catches him clearly in the head with his elbow. Like, devastating hit, late.
Unnecessary.
Player left the game injured. I know he missed the next game. I don't know if he's still out now or where the Islanders are.
I mean, that looked really bad. I don't know.
No,
I don't know what his Pelech's condition is, but that just looked like a horrible hit. And he wasn't even playing the puck either.
It felt like an easy one to go 6 to 10 games with.
Easily.
Now, this is, I guess, maybe this is the grays. Brendan Gallagher's never been suspended during his career. I don't have an answer.
No, I don't necessarily need like an answer. It's more just like I see a hit like that where a player skates through the middle of the ice and the puck is not being, Pelech gets rid of the puck. So Gallagher is not going to Pelech to play the puck. He's clearly going in there to deliver a deliberate, malicious hit, and he catches him in the head, a very dangerous area. It's reckless. It's stupid. It's the type of hits that the league needs to be eradicating from its game. And only 5 games. I understand
but five's a lot, and he got
but
kicked
it's a
out of
lot.
that
But
game.
it's a bad hit.
He scored 2 goals on the power play while he was out.
Yeah, it was a terrible. The Canadiens ended up paying for it, but they ended up winning that game anyway.
Right, which might be a loss depending how you view these things.
That is very true, considering where the Montreal Canadiens are at. But at the same time, like, I think if you have a hit like that and you are the Department of Player Safety, I thought 6 or 7 would have made sense. I think 5, I guess, is it's the absolute max in that situation for them. But I would have been okay if they gave 6, 7, 8 more games for that to really send a message. Of course, that sets a precedent going forward, but I don't know if you...
Do you know what else 6 games is and up? It's the threshold for where you can appeal to a neutral arbitrator.
That is true.
Which I'm not saying is why they did it, but it is notable. Like, if you give a player an 8-game suspension, that player can bring in a third party to rule on it. And we've seen that third party arbitrator at times reduce the length of those suspensions.
Jason Spezza comes to mind.
I think Gary Bettman might have reduced that one.
Okay, Gary Bettman did.
Because it goes first to the commissioner, but then you can do a subsequent one to a neutral arbitrator. Because I think that's been the weird thing that players have always pointed out, is like the league itself doles out the discipline. Anyway, I don't want to digress too far, but those
are good details. I didn't know that.
But 5 is the maximum you can give a player, and he could still, Brendan Gallagher could appeal to the commissioner, but I'm pretty sure, I'm a little fuzzy on some of my CBA rules, but I'm pretty sure you can't go to the neutral arbitrator at 5 or under.
Okay. But so you think 5 is sufficient?
No, look when I saw it in real time, I was thinking it was going to be an in-person hearing and 6+. I didn't think it was going to be 20 games or anything like that. Although, if the player's stretchered off or something, like sometimes the outcome, maybe there's not a lot in Brendan Gallagher's corner other than the fact he hasn't been suspended before.
Right.
That's like the only piece of evidence where you're like, okay, maybe you're a little bit lenient. But Jason Spezza hadn't been suspended before. Now, in his case, and he got a 6-game suspension. In his case, though, his teammate Rasmus Sandin had been, I don't know if he was hit in the corner, but he'd been kind of injured in the corner. And so it was retaliatory, which, it shows premeditation.
Yeah.
Is the point. Whereas maybe you don't have that in the Gallagher case. It could have been more.
Okay. All right.
I
think
don't get as fired up about this as everybody else.
I think it's easy to get fired up considering the inconsistency of the Department of Player Safety.
But how could you ever be consistent?
It's not my
crazy.
But it's not my job to do that.
I don't think that there is a consistency that you could ever have. Like, they're doing their best at that.
I can appreciate that they're doing their best, but when you clearly see that one play gets a certain amount of games and it's something similar might get something different, or it just feels as if the process is like them. I say this all the time, but it does, at least for fans, feel like the guys at the DOPS go to the wheel they have in their back wall. They spin the wheel of justice, and wherever it lands on, that's the punishment that gets doled out. I thought at the beginning of the year, this year, it seemed like they were getting on that way where it was going to be consistent, but now I'm not so sure.
Look, they do these videos now. Like, I don't know if you watch them, and I'm not like talking down to you, but like,
no.
If
but
someone does care to like understand how they get there, they're showing their work as much as they can.
Yeah, and I appreciate that they do that, and they do a good job usually in the way that they describe it.
Right. And I just think that the plays themselves are like snowflakes. Like, no two are exactly the same. Like, this guy got suspended 3 games for a cross check. Well, David Perron, he hits and you have to bring that one up. I'm sure the agent Provocateur wouldn't approve of that, but
he'll also be at the SDPN All-Star Takeover on Friday, by the way.
But I guess my point is that no two cross checks are the exact same. I'm just glad I don't have that job.
Me too. I'm very glad I don't have that job. I still think though, even if they're all very different, there are at least some that are similar enough where you can at least size them up. So, and I don't know. Well, you go.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, do you have another hit that Gallagher?
I can't think of another Gallagher hit that you're right. He has never been suspended, and I can't really think of too many other plays where he's done anything that close to being.
But I meant, is there another suspension where someone got 8 games or something like that? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. But I that's true. I think I'm not even necessarily thinking about
5 games. Not a lot of people get 5-game suspension.
Not a lot of people get 5 games, but I still think for that type of hit that you don't want in the league, I don't necessarily. I mean, maybe 5 games is enough, but I think 6 or 7 wouldn't have been a problem. I think going more really sets a message.
$170,000.
It's not my money, I guess, but you're right.
Imagine?
$170,000. What? Shoot, that's a lot of money.
It's you get to Christmas next year and you're like, man, I wish I had that $170,000.
Yeah, I wish I had that money to do different. Yeah, what would I do with $170,000? Let us know in the comments what you would do with $170,000.
This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shopify. If you could trade a bench warmer for the GOAT, you'd do it, right? Get your business a game-changing pickup by choosing the commerce platform with the internet's best converting checkout. That's Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed sneakers, using the in-person POS system, or offering official outfielders outfits on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you're covered. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify's the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. Shopify also powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, and Shopify, being a truly global force, powers Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Johnston, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Johnston to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/Johnston.
Let's stop off in Columbus. We are going to get to Hockey Canada and Alex Formanton, but I do want to stop off in Columbus because there's 2 stories that came out from the last few days. Patrik Laine entering the Players Assistance Program, and David Juracek, I believe, is do you know who his agent is?
Alan Walsh.
Noted Alan Walsh client, David Juracek, talking to a friend of the show, Aaron Portzline of The Athletic, just about what's been pretty weird for him with that franchise in Columbus, where he hasn't played since January 9th, gets called up, sent back down while being scratched while playing up at the big club, and then talks to Portzline. One big quote that's kind of going around here. I played good hockey in the NHL. I'm an NHL player right now. That's my opinion, that I should be in the NHL right now. I see guys from the same draft, like Simon Nemec in New Jersey, Kevin Korchinski in Chicago. They get a chance on the power play. They play a ton of minutes in the NHL. Those are different teams, so different situations, but I can compare with them. I just want a chance to play like that. When you hear David Juracek say that, I don't know how much you've been following his situation in Columbus. When you see his situation and you hear him say stuff like that, do alarm bells go off for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, your antenna goes up for sure. I actually just thought he was being honest. I didn't get the sense he was putting the organization on blast or
no.
I think Aaron Portzline got in front of him in Cleveland and was like, what do you think of this? Where are you at? And he just gave his side of how he views things. Now it might be a little bit more honest than some of the organization might want, but to me, he does have to play those minutes. And I don't think it's the end of the world if he plays them in the American Hockey League. Now I gather and respect that he probably prefers to be in the NHL. But if there's one area where the Blue Jackets actually have some depth is on their blue line. And, keep in mind they got Provorov in the offseason. Obviously, Werenski's still there. You got Eric Branson there. You got some players that have been in and out between Andrew Peeke and Adam Boquist, who's injured now. But, there's not a massive opening for David Jiricek to play the kind of role that he's thirsting for. Whereas, I look at Chicago when he mentions Korchinski, I mean, Seth Jones and then, Connor Murray. Like there's just not.
There's a big drop off after Seth Jones.
I just think Chicago has more holes, right? Like they have their lineup is way less complete. And so there's that opportunity there for them. The Nemec example from New Jersey is like New Jersey's blue line is battered right now. They're claiming guys on waivers and the like to fill out a roster. And
they literally picked up Nick DeSimone the other day.
Yeah. And the big one being Dougie Hamilton being out long-term. So, I think that each individual situation is unique. I can understand his frustration. It would be hard to sit here without having to make those decisions and be like, yeah, he should not be going up and down every two days. But I think ultimately what management landed on is he's got to play. And so I would suspect you're going to see a long run in Cleveland for him now. Although I say that and they maybe get 3 injuries the next game. And like, this is the reality when you're on the bubble, right? But this is a top prospect for the organization, an important player that they develop. It's been a weird year in Columbus, right? Like it started weird with the whole Mike Babcock thing right before training camp. It's been pretty clear Pascal Vincent has tried to, I think, be a bit of a hard-nosed coach.
Yeah.
Benching players, discussing underperformance in the media. Like, I think he's trying to push the entire group to a different level, but it's just been a difficult season there. And Cleveland looks like they're going to make the playoffs. Like, I don't know that it's the worst for someone like Jiricek to just play tons of minutes there, have a long playoff run, and then I'm guessing some of these roster situations will sort themselves out because, Columbus is going to trade some players either at or before the deadline and then also in the summertime. So, there's a path out of this, but it's pretty clear right now. It's a hot situation. The player's frustrated. I haven't spoken to Alan. I'm guessing Alan's frustrated because
I bet
he's always in the corner of his clients. And, I think the Blue Jackets themselves are just, what a tiring year. And, we don't know what the future of Jarmo Kekalainen and their GM is. I mean, we haven't hit on that in a long time, but he's on an expiring contract and it's very much up in the air what management's going to look like there next season. So there's just nobody that is probably feeling too comfortable in Columbus right now. Maybe other than Johnny Goodrow. He's got a long contract. But there's not a lot of stability, I would say, in that organization at the moment.
I'm sure we'll run into Alan on Friday, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he's feeling a type of way with the David Jiricek thing. I'm sure.
He hasn't made any public comments, though. I mean, and he's not.
That's true.
Going back to Derek Brassard, I remember many years ago when he was in Columbus, obviously there's the whole Marc-Andre Fleury situation with the infamous meme. Anyway, well, yeah. If he's feeling a certain way, we'll probably know it at some point, as the whole world will know.
Maybe he'll tell us on Friday.
You should ask him.
Yeah, maybe I could ask him. I mean, you could ask him too.
Just saying.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, the SDPN All-Star I know we've been bringing that up a lot. We will have that at the end of the week. We will have Ask CJ later. We will have there's some names that may be kind of tossed around in the trade market that I might bring up with you, but I do want to see if we can but I think we can take some time and get into the latest development with regards to Hockey Canada and Alex Formenton, who left his team from Switzerland. And it seems like he will be charged in connection to the 2018 World Junior Championship incident that involved Team Canada from that year. I imagine with next Monday, that's supposed to be when we're going to hear from London Police. I know last time we discussed that situation, we were trying to figure out, what is that time period for players to surrender themselves to the London Police? Is there anything else we can go off from that? Is there any other development? I mean, just seeing that Alex Formenton is that first name that's out there, that's a really big development.
It is. And, Alex Formenton is one of 4 members from the 2018 World Junior team that was not under an NHL contract this year. And he did turn himself in on Sunday morning in London. I guess some people had suspected this was behind at the time, I suppose, when the Senators, didn't resign him as a restricted free agent last season. And, I think one thing that's worth pointing out is that his lawyers released a statement saying that he's going to vociferously defend his innocence in this case, and they're asking that no one jump to any conclusions ahead of time. So, I mean, that will be part of, there's a legal process still to play out for him. And, you know, we don't know the nature of the charges. You know, one thing the police have continued to say is that they'll get into all that next Monday, February 5th.
Yeah.
When they have their media briefing then. And so, you know, basically this is the first player that we know of, because I guess it could have happened. We don't know, but that's turned himself in. His lawyer has acknowledged that he's been charged, and that's kind of all we know. And so I still want to walk on gentle ground here, but you know, Formanton, his rights are retained by the Senators, where he played off and on for a couple seasons, was a second round draft pick of theirs, but was not under an NHL contract. So the league itself has not yet commented, I'm guessing, because he's, I shouldn't guess.
No,
they haven't commented because, you know, he's not a player that's under an NHL deal, but you know, just by the math, the fact there's 5 players and only 4 players on the entire team don't have NHL deals. We'll stay tuned and see what else develops.
Yeah, I'm at this point, I'm just anticipating if more players in connection to this are going to be, we're going to hear the news the same way that we heard the Alex Formanton story, where it's,
I don't know that, you know, I don't know
Right.
what to expect. I mean,
me neither.
Cause you know, let's face it, we're reacting a lot to what the Globe and Mail's reported. So that's it. There's 5 players that have been asked to turn themselves in, but we don't know of any others that have at this point in time.
Yeah, but we will continue to follow that story as it develops. I realized something just now where we did go in on David Jiricek, and then I did kind of jump to Hockey Canada, but we didn't really touch off too much on Patrik Laine being in the player assistance program. I don't know what the reasons are for, but I mean, I just hope that he is doing okay. I think that's more than fine for us to feel that way.
For sure. And you know, that's the point of that program. It's to assist players. Like, it's literally what it's called. There's a high degree of sensitivity around the details of what treatment a player is receiving. I do know people that work within the league and the Players Association that obviously are privy to more info than us. But often they don't even know what the exact nature of an individual's circumstances are that's led them to be there. And so, you know, we don't want to speculate in the Laine case, but you know, it's been a tough couple of years for him. He's been in and out of the lineup a lot with injuries. You know, he lost his father unexpectedly a couple of years ago at age 54, which is obviously far too young to lose someone you love. And, you know, I think it's been difficult, but you know, I have to say Patrik Laine, of the years I've been around the league, has been one of my favorite players to cover. He's really got a showman's sort of sense, not just on the ice, but off the ice, like a real flair for the game, love of the game. And, you know, he put a statement out on Instagram and was saying that he's just got to look after himself right now. And so, you know, what's great is that this program will allow him to do that. And he's basically out until, you know, the counselors overseeing his case say he's okay to come back. So we don't know when that'll be, but, you know, obviously wish Patrik the best and hope he gets the help he needs.
A bit of a random thing to think about with Patrik Laine, but we obviously remember he's from that same Austin Matthews draft class. And you mentioned his personality and his flair. And man, that guy was off to a really great start. And could you imagine if he continued at that all-star level and he gets into, like, not to bring up the all-star game again, but like this event, the skills competition, something like that. That would have been so good for him. It would have been so fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he'd hang in some of those events. Like, speed was not his game.
No, but
he could sit that one out.
Exactly.
Fastest skater, you get a chance to pass. But I'll tell you, I think it was his 3rd game in the NHL, might have been his 4th. I was there. It was the Leafs at Winnipeg. And, you know, obviously all the comparisons and hype about him and Matthews, and he had 3-goal game in that game. And I believe the winning goal might have even been in overtime. Time dulls some of the exact memories. But I just remember, like, he always had that flair, and like, he didn't mind. I don't think either guy no players like it when you're like, this guy versus this guy. Like, it's not a hockey thing, but you know, I thought he did. He kind of like soaked all that up. And, you know, I was out in Winnipeg too, when they went on their run to the Western Conference Final. And, you know, he was always in the middle of all the media there and giving extra time for the Finnish journalists. And yeah, I mean, I just, you know, just for look at hockey secondary in a time like this, you just want the guy to look after himself. But, you know, because of how important hockey is to him, what would be great is on the other side of this period if he could get back to being at his best. Because it feels like it's been a few years since that's been the case. And I don't know if that's just like not having the right teammates to play with. I mean, obviously he's got a specific skill set. He's a sniper. Like it would have made sense if things had gone different in Winnipeg to have someone like Mark Scheifele as his center. It's almost like a Brett Hull, Adam Oates kind of situation where you could have really had a setup man for him. Anyway, I mean, I just hope that he's able to get to a spot because he's still only 25, 26. He's not that old.
So young.
I mean,
a lot to play.
So, it's not always a straight line. You had Nichushkin had a 0-goal season before becoming like just a horse on the Avalanche, right? Like, I just think of like, it's not every player's path. Very few guys step in the league, are dominant, and are just have amazing season after amazing season. Like we've seen Connor McDavid do that. I mean, even Nathan McKinnon, one of the absolute best players on the earth, like took a couple years to really get humming at the level.
He did.
You know what I mean? Crosby, Ovechkin, both were among the league leaders right from the get-go and have been for 17, 18 years. But there's not many guys that can do that. And so anyway, there's still some hope there for Patrik Laine, I think, but obviously has to attend to what's most important.
Yeah. I'm rooting for him, and I hope he gets whatever help he needs. And I hope we get to at least see glimpses of what his first few years were like in the NHL. Because I thought he was really going to turn to a special player. Not to the point where I don't know if he'd get to a point where he'd be just as good, if not better, than Austin Matthews. I have to look back at my old takes on that, but I really hope that he just,
Do you got some old tweets from like 2016 where you were just being like producer Drew out there trying to get everyone fired up in Toronto?
The worst hockey take I've ever made, and I've owned it on social media, is that I thought Jonathan Drouin was going to be the best player from his draft class. That's not going to be the case because Nathan McKinnon exists.
Yes.
That's the worst. That's the worst one I've ever done.
I've had some, I don't even remember. I don't keep track of that stuff. But
I'm glad. Yeah, I don't try to keep track of all of them, but like that one it's been flashed to me a few times. It's like, yeah, like that's pretty bad. It is what it is.
Did you delete it or does it still exist?
I think it still exists. Because like at the end of the day, like, I mean,
no, it's a moment in time.
I owned it. I'm wrong.
Hey, there's a date stamp on it. It was like maybe 2013.
Yeah, like it was years ago. Like I obviously still don't believe that.
Right. I tweeted this year that I thought the Cowboys were going to win the Super Bowl like really early in the season.
I remember you that video of Michael Parsons, and you were like, that guy looks like a Super Bowl winner.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I got you on that.
And that was like the third or fourth week of the season.
Yeah, sorry, man.
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, very quickly here for jumping from topic to topic here, but I do like that we were able to end the Patrik Laine one on somewhat of a lighthearted note, because I do want to get to trade bait and I do want to get to ask CJ.
Okay.
Not too much on trade bait, but just three guys that have come top of mind here. One player, Chris Tanev, during Hockey Night in Canada over the weekend, they mentioned Chris Tanev and the Ottawa Senators as a possibility. That'd be really interesting. I know there are Ottawa Senators fans I've seen on social media who have another Calgary Flames defenseman in mind. I don't know how likely that is, but Chris Tanev being a pending UFA, that team trying to become a playoff team, I can understand why Chris Tanev to them. But I mean, I'm sure people in Toronto would love that, going to Ottawa instead of being a Leaf. But how do you feel about that kind of rumor that's being dangled around?
Well, I mean, it's a conversation that involves a contract extension, right? I mean, that's what makes it interesting, is that Ottawa is not your typical team that we would have linked up to Chris Tanev on the big board, because, usually you're looking at the teams that have a chance to win the whole thing. I mean, I know in Vancouver, there's still interest in bringing him back there. Obviously, the Leafs' interest has been much discussed going all the way back to November or December. I think there's a lot of teams that like Chris Tanev. I mean, he's number 2 on the big board.
There's a lot to like about Chris Tanev.
For good reason. He brings the things that you tend to see out of blue lines that have success in the playoffs. I know he's fought some injuries over the years and things like that, but he gives you his all. Not too old. Is he 33?
Yeah, he's like in his mid-30s.
The
injury history obviously is going to follow it.
There's not a long list of guys, though, if you peruse the big board, where you're like, this, you'd rather have that person instead of him.
Playoff. He looks like teams that are all like, yeah, I want that type of guy for the playoffs. Like, I need that presence. I need that. Like Chris Tanev, if you look at him in the face, you're like, that's the guy I want.
Well, and this is what tells you about Ottawa is that they're a team, like they're dying for a little bit more leadership, stoutness in their dressing room, whatever you want to call it. They don't have it.
Yeah. And
this year, I guess we've hit on Ottawa, but like this year has been a disaster, really. Yes. I know that they've played some better hockey lately and they've won some games and maybe there's, but like it's a little late, right? In the proceedings. Like you've been down at the bottom of the league all year. You fired a GM, a head coach. You lost a player for 41 games. You got docked a first round draft pick. I mean, yeah. I get that all these things are like, that's a confluence of events, but it really has been a tough year in Ottawa. And they were like, if you went back to training camp, they all believed, like from Tkachuk to Stützle, like these guys thought this was going to be the year that they took a big step. And look, they might still finish out strong with 30 plus games, almost 40 games left, but it's not going to be like a real playoff chase unless they reel off 18 wins in a row and beat the Oilers record here or whatever it's going to end up being.
Yeah. Sorry, Ottawa. That's not happening.
It might. This is why we watch, man. But I'm just saying, like, absent something like almost miraculous, they're already thinking about next year. And so that what makes them an interesting suitor is that would be a next year move for them, even though it's one you're making at the deadline because he's available now. But you're only making that trade as Ottawa, knowing that you can keep him and that he'll sign an extension.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye out for Chris Tanev and the Ottawa Senators. What about Sean Monahan? That's a name that's been floated around for a while, doing well with the Montreal Canadiens. Could be a good center for teams that are looking for one.
Yeah, and I think a lot of interest in him. I mean, how many teams want a center? I mean, unfortunately, now you've just seen the Rangers lose Filipino for the year with his concussion issues, so that opens up. There's another team that can probably use a center. We've talked about Boston. Colorado could probably use a second line center. I think Winnipeg is looking as well as Vlad Namestnikov has played for them. I think that they're looking at like, can we get through 4 rounds with him in the 2C spot, or is there someone we could bring in? And then you look at the number of centers available and you see Elias Lindholm at the top of the board.
Yes. Then
you quickly get to Sean Monahan. Maybe you're looking at Adam Henrique in Anaheim to come in and play some center for you. There's not a long list though. Like it gets, if you're looking for that specific option, Monahan is one of the players available. It helps that he's on a $2 million contract and that Montreal would even retain 50% of that potentially. I mean, obviously the price goes up if you do that, but I mean, he's as addable, which I realize is not a word, but he's
addable?
he's like add. Yeah. Anyway, but
no, I was just like, what?
But he's as easy to squeeze in under the cap as almost any player you might be trading for. And, and the Canadiens have a lot of teams calling on him. So, and I think Montreal would be willing to move him like that. I don't think that they need to wait it out till March 8th.
No.
And that's the other interesting thing there is there's a lot of other teams with players that are kind of intriguing, but they're definitely going to play it out towards the last couple of weeks. I think the Canadiens and Kent Hughes is not afraid to sell some pieces at the deadline. He's done it the last couple of years, and this might be his last year to be in that position. And so Sean Monahan is probably his most viable piece to move. I mean, Jake Allen's out there, maybe some other defensemen, but I think really Monahan is it, and they might get a first round pick for him.
Producer Drew, thank you for the text. You meant attainable. That's probably the word you're trying to think of.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not trying to like.
It's a Monday, bud.
It's okay, man, dude. We got a long week ahead of us.
Yes, sir.
What about
water?
Yeah, shout out the water. I don't think we have a sponsor for whatever water bottle that is, so no free promo for you. What about Adam Henrique? Is there anything you're hearing about him, the Anaheim Ducks forward?
Well, he fits into the same category, right? Like, because he hasn't played in the playoffs, believe it or not, Julian, since the Devils went to the Cup final, which I think is 2012.
Oh my God!
So it's been a long
time,
go for him, and I think he's very excited to do that. Obviously, Anaheim is a team that will trade a player like him, like Ilya Lyubushkin, pending UFAs, veteran players. And, Henrique, I think, is on the radar for a lot of teams. I mean, there not a lot of forwards, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you're, like, how many teams, I've mentioned a bunch. Who I haven't mentioned that I think could still get a forward is Vancouver, Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas.
Yeah.
In addition to Washington, Boston, Colorado, it's a lot of teams. And then, okay, Jake Gensel maybe is in that mix. If Pittsburgh sells, maybe Jordan Eberle gets moved out of Seattle, although, as we were mentioning earlier, they're right in the thick of things in terms of the wild card race in the Western Conference. I mean, there's just not a lot of guys. And so, this is supply and demand.
What's interesting too is
Adam Henrique's going to be in demand.
What I think is interesting too is some of the guys that you've mentioned here. Maybe the price goes up on Jake Gensel. I don't get the sense beyond Elias Lindholm, maybe that like the price might be like all that extravagant for teams, and maybe the run is on those guys.
Well, how many teams do we know for sure are gonna they got their first rounder, they got their top prospects on the table? I think Vancouver will be aggressive. They've been pretty clear. I think Edmonton will be reasonably aggressive. Vegas aggressive seems to be in the DNA of that franchise. So I could see them getting aggressive, and they got Barbashev last year, which was a big help for them in terms of winning the Stanley Cup. But I don't know how many teams. I feel like a lot of the teams that we have as buyers are a little bit more do we want to give everything up? I mean, part of that too is this thing is wide open.
It is.
And wide open is a good thing because it brings more teams thinking hey, maybe if we get on a roll and something can happen here. The flip side of that is even the teams near the top are maybe this might not be the year, right? When we talk in Toronto about it all the time, is this a year? And you and I had the debate one day on the previous show, but that the Leafs should throw a bunch of assets at trying to have short-term help, or maybe you just kind of go through it. I mean, I think that's part of the exercise happening with the Leafs, and they're not the only ones. And so, yeah, I mean, Adam Henrique, I'm pretty confident saying will be moved. He'll end that long playoff drought, personal long playoff drought, and pretty useful player still. Doesn't score at the rate he once did, but pretty good in the dot. Can play the wing too. I just think that you're looking for players with one-dimensional tool sets don't usually. That's a harder equation, right? I mean, we saw Tarasenko moved last year to deadline, and Ottawa's going to try to move him again, I would think, this year. But he's a scorer who's not scoring like he once did. I think that someone like Adam Henrique, you can make an argument, can fit in a lot of different ways on another team, and so we'll keep our eye on him too.
All right. And are we getting another trade board before March 8th?
Yeah. I don't have a date for you. Probably coming out All-Star, so probably early next week.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll be on the lookout for that.
There's a bunch of other stories ahead of that one.
That's what we call a tease in this industry, sir. Let's get to some questions for Ask CJ. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions over X. Sorry, I almost called it Twitter. And Discord that CJ will try his best to answer. From Chucky Picks, what was the first album you bought?
Ooh. Aerosmith, Get a Grip.
What year was that?
I mean, do you got Google?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I think it's Get a Grip. It's the one that has the cow udder on the CD cover.
There is a cow udder. 1993.
So that was the first CD I bought.
Do you have Google?
Well, because I don't know. It was a long time ago. And I don't know why I chose that album. I mean, it was a pretty popular album at the time. But that was the first one.
My first album I bought was Infinity on High by Fall Out Boy.
Was that a CD or?
It's a CD.
Okay.
It was a CD.
It's good to know that you have owned physical music, that you haven't only been a digital music guy.
I like high school. Remember HMV?
Dude.
Yeah.
I remember waiting in line at HMV, the one right by Ryerson University where I went, now Toronto Metropolitan University.
Yeah.
There's a big HMV there, and Radiohead dropped an album, and I was in line at midnight to buy it.
Oh, so you've done that where you've gone
I think it was Kid A.
Oh shoot. What's your you know what's weird? I've been thinking about asking you this question for months. What is your favorite Radiohead song?
Oh man. I can't name one. I love Radiohead.
Yeah, I know you do.
So
but
I can't have one song.
So okay, I know artists like that where it's the same thing, but in terms of your favorite songs.
I mean, their whole catalog.
Yeah, but you can't say the whole catalog.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Yes, you can.
No, you
I
can't.
just did.
There are songs from Radiohead I'm sure that are not as good. And like there are songs that you don't go through you don't play the catalog every day. There are probably songs
I don't
you listen
play it
to
a
more
lot.
than others.
To be honest, I don't know when I last put on a Radiohead song. It's been a long time.
I mean, like I think it's one of those things where you like an artist so much where it's like you don't want to overplay them to death.
But if I heard one randomly somewhere, I'd be pumped. Like I like.
So like Karma Police.
It's in like the top 10 probably for me.
Burn the Witch.
Like I love the whole OK Computer album.
Yeah. That's a good album.
I just don't think you can go wrong.
Okay.
Have you seen the videotape Radiohead thing?
I don't think I have.
So I can't explain it because I'm limited in explaining music, but they play a musical trick in that song, and you can see it. There's like a little documentary about it, and it like blows your mind when you watch it.
I gotta figure out what that is.
I'll send it to you.
I remember the song videotape.
But like it has kind of a funny pacing to it, and it's because they're doing something that the music the way it's not normally played. Anyway, it's Radiohead. Those guys are brilliant.
Okay, now you got me. Now you got to send me that. From Mikey.
But I'm not going to say that's my favorite song, but I love watching that video about that song.
But that's cool.
They're like literally on another level.
But like, I still think it's wild where it's like I'm asking your favorite song from them. You're like, I like everything. You can't say you like everything. From Mikey, hearing anything from Tampa Bay, they've been quietly munching points and have been better defensively, but still seems lots of talk around them for finding another defenseman.
Yeah, with them and what cap space. I mean, Julian, if anyone will find it, it will be Julian Brisebois because he's made lots of trades, but he's also traded, he traded multiple firsts for Hagel. Like, I just don't think they have a ton in the cupboard there. They're going to squeeze what they can out of that team, but I don't know that they're going to be the headliner this year. But you know what? They glide beneath the radar a little bit sometimes with that stuff. But I haven't heard anything like tangible, and I don't see them being like the winners of trade deadline day, which doesn't necessarily mean you lost, frankly. No. The winners of the offseason and the winners of trade deadline day often are like, oh man, they traded all that stuff away and they didn't even go anywhere.
Yeah, how many times do we look at those winners and we're like, man, they won everything?
Yeah, the problem is it does happen sometimes, so it doesn't invalidate the thought.
No.
Like Vegas did go out and make it. Like Barbashev was a top 5 player on the trade boards last year, and they traded for him and they won, and then he re-signed there. So it does happen, but it's just sometimes the teams that make the big splashes, like the Rangers, they lost in round 1. Which I'm not picking on them. I'm just going off the top of my head.
No, yeah.
But they went and got Tarasenko and Kane, and it just didn't fit.
And they were up 2-0 in that series. And then they lost 4-2, and then I ate a poutine hot dog.
All right.
Kay McGuire, can a team... That's such a bad hot dog. It was awful. Can a team trade a player while on their All-Star break to a team still playing? Would the player be expected to leave their Mexico vacation and report?
Yes. I mean, I don't know that would happen. I can't recall it happening.
I was wondering... I figured I knew the answer was yes, but I was just wondering if there was like a story.
Well, Bo Horvat last year, the first time he pulled on Islanders jersey was at the All-Star game.
Yes.
Where he was meant to represent the Vancouver Canucks because that trade happened. But I don't know that Bo, I think it happened before. He wasn't on vacation anywhere.
No.
But yeah, I mean, because some teams have the bye week right after All-Star. Some are on a bye week right now. And when I say week, I think it's only 4 or 5 days. But in theory, yes. But I'm guessing the acquiring team might also say, like, do you know what? You're in some locale, like don't rush here, come up in a day or two. And I think there's gonna be some compassionate grounds in there, but yeah, there's no roster freezes whatsoever. We've seen all kinds of players on waivers, guys going up and down with the American Hockey League in the last few days, and that will continue.
We're going to need some help on the audiovisual side for this next question from Ahmad Rahman. Which one would Big Money CJ pick? It's the photo of the 3 starter Pokemon, Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur. I'm going to make sure you get to look at the photo here so you know what you're working with. But I'm sure for viewers on video, maybe we could find a way to get a photo up. Maybe there's one already covering my face. We got the thumbs up from Drew. Which one would you pick, Big Money CJ?
The blue guy.
You would pick Squirtle. And that's why we're friends.
Is that a good pick?
I think that's the best pick you can make. I'm biased. I love Squirtle because they evolve. You know how Pokemon evolve?
No. I don't know anything about Pokemon.
How do you not know anything about Pokemon?
That came around when I was like listening to the Aerosmith CDs in my basement. I have no idea.
Pokemon was like how old were you in the late 90s? You weren't that old.
like 16 or 17.
Okay, the Pokemon might have been a little past you then.
Like the late, like
That's like a kid's thing.
but seriously, I've heard of Pokemon. I just
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
I don't know anything about it, but I know I would be the blue guy.
Okay, yeah, Squirtle. Squirtle's the best pick to make. Bulbasaur's a good pick. Charmander, I get it. I know Stephen A. Smith picked Charmander when he was asked this question.
Oh, did he? See, Stephen A is older than me, so
Yeah. He pronounced it Shamander, and the only reason why he picked Shamander is because the forehead reminds him of his own.
see, I
think this person was trying to.
I was like, my favorite color is blue. I'll take the blue guy.
Your favorite color is blue.
Yep.
My favorite color is blue.
There you go.
I don't know why we never figured out each other's favorite color until this point.
We've only had 200 episodes to talk about nonsense.
Yeah, you know.
Finally got there.
Yeah, we finally got there. Yeah, it'd be nice to actually know more about each other's lives.
Stick around Toronto this week, bud. We'll hang out.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be a lot of that going on. Anyway, thank you to everyone who sent in questions for Ask CJ. That's going to do it for our Monday edition of the show. Nothing broke. Everything went great. And we'll be back on we'll be back on Friday for our live show.
Does that mean no Thursday show?
It's a good question. Should we do a Thursday show?
I have no idea.
That's actually a good question. So our Friday show is going to be on YouTube, so that's going to be our Thursday show. Okay. I guess that could work. I mean, I'm not opposed to doing a Thursday show and then this, but also I don't know if that depends if something happens, I guess.
Don't add another thing. We already talked to my calendar. I'm already stressed.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Just make sure,
Sorry.
direct me in the group chat where I need to be.
I don't mean to add more to CJ's plate.
No, I'm not trying to make it sound like that. It's just...
Also, I have no idea what my week's going to look like either.
Right.
I mean, there's some hangouts and stuff, but like, I don't know. I will be happy to work wherever I'm needed.
Okay. I heard there's an athletic party on Thursday night.
I thought it was Friday night.
There's one on Thursday. That doesn't mean there isn't also one on Friday.
I've heard about the Thursday one. I thought there was also one on Friday, but that depends. Hey, look, we'll figure that all out, and on Friday we'll have our live show, and we'll have more fun stuff from there. And yeah, keep it locked here. Subscribe to our show, whether on Spotify, Apple, the YouTube page, wherever you listen to our fine show. And if you haven't already, buy the tickets for Friday and for Saturday for the SDPN All-Star Takeover. Have any of the special guests been revealed for Saturday? They're still really keeping that under the chest, right? They're not leaking that.
I don't know. I don't even know. So don't.
Yeah,
look,
we don't.
I can't even.
We don't even know
because it's good they don't tell me this stuff because I would spoil that surprise.
Oh yeah,
completely.
I know I would too.
I'm the kind of friend like don't tell me you're having like a surprise party for your partner or whatever because I'm going to spill the beans by accident somehow.
Have you spoiled a surprise party before?
No, but I'm likely to. I don't have a good story, but I'm just saying don't.
Yeah.
It's just best to keep me in the dark too. Is all I'm saying.
I figured we'd at least get like a hint.
Well, let's log off and go see Steve.
Let's go do that right now. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long and peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.